let me start with a positive note, even if all the things that Dore has said until now are all truth and important, and I will say something more about that. But now let me tell you how the project went on and how the discussion brought us somewhere where I have really liked to be. First of all, it was a positive thought that inspired our work. Otherwise, we would not take the pain of inviting all of these people from all over Europe. And you know, we had here people that goes from Saad Amrani, who is the chief commissioner of the Belgian Federal Police. He was here sitting with us one day long. We had Francois Heisbourg, who is one of the advisor of President Macron. We had Giulio Terzi di Sant'Agata, who has been a Minister of Foreign Affairs in Italy. We had Volker Beck, who is one of the Green in the Bundestag, very famous, and so many others. That now, and then we have asked each of them to write about the issue that was more important to them. Of course, all of us, the scholars of this institution, Freddy Eytan, was the president of all the sessions and helped very much in the work, and gave also a very important piece explaining the roots of the problem between Europe and Israel. And so now we have this book, and this book will give the basis for everybody that will want to discuss the problem of the differences, of the clashes, of the misunderstandings that are really very serious, very, very important, and that, as Dore said right now, since 1967, are a real torture and torment Israel, and we want them to finish. That's the reason why we try to give here an overview of the situation. Now, I won't go through all of them, of course, because it's impossible, and then will kill me. So I don't want to get to that dramatic point. But I want to give you, I want to tell you something that I thought just while coming here, and then I think that the situation is really changing very quickly. That's my impression. I think that the new affirmative presence of Israel all over the international panorama is quickly expanding all over Europe too. This new affirmative presence in the international arena comes from several important points. One is the very prudent management of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Israel has put itself in a different position compared to the past. And I will be glad to answer two questions about that. I don't want to enter into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is not the point. And then it is quite clear that the Iranian imperialism, even if the position between America and the United States and Europe are very different, and Europe has disapproved the attitude of the President of the United States, still are very influential, even in Europe, and I feel this around. I feel that the situation is changing, and we have seen that in the thing that you have quoted now, the fact that the sanctions has been imposed on Iran after the clear discovery that terrorist attacks were planned by the Iranians against Europe. I feel in this a change of mentality, a change of the situation. And then also it's impossible for the European not to notice that the political Islam and the 7 years of war, 8 almost now, in Syria have changed completely the geopolitical panorama. This is something that Europe feels and that changes its mind about Europe. Not to talk about the internal change of Europe. Europe is in an economic crisis. This economic crisis is very much tied to immigration. The problem of immigration is very much tied to the Mediterranean geopolitical situation. And the reflection about all of these things brings to another evaluation of what Israel represents as the only democracy in the Middle East, and the country that has always given immense advantages to Europe in every field, technological, medical, innovation, even in the field of how to cope with democracy. I think that's something with democracy in a controversial situation. There are so many fields not to consider now the new opening space of the clean energy that will come from Israel through the Mediterranean Sea toward Cyprus and Italy, comprehending also some state that belongs to the Sunni, not Sunni, to the Sunni side of the Muslim panorama, which means an inclusive point of view of forces that can be positive and that are changing the geopolitical panorama of all the things. And having said that, I will also say that the government has engaged in a very important fight that includes countries that were not included before. I mean, there has been some scandal about the fact that Israel has been speaking from such a close vicinity with the Visegrad country, with the other group, what is called. Tell you right away, with the other group of countries that belongs to the Eastern Europe, and we have seen that this inclusion in the European discourse of these countries has been extremely positive, has gone very well, and is pushing the situation toward a complex and larger, different attitude toward Israel. You can see this in countries that were not such before that. For instance, there are several things that can be noticed in the Western Europe, like when Netanyahu visited May, when was it? In June for the Balfour Declaration, and there was the suggestion to May from the Palestinian side to renounce the Balfour Declaration. May declared her faithfulness and the good relationship of the British people with the Balfour Declaration, and therefore with the sovereignty of the Jewish people in its land. Sure, it was not that sure at that time. It came out sure at that point. Italy is, we had already several visits, one of them here of the Deputy Foreign Minister, that declare, while Europe is declaring that is completely against the move of President Trump that decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Italy sat in this room with us and declared that he would like very much to see an Institute of Culture in Jerusalem, an Italian Institute of Culture in Jerusalem, while afterwards Salvini, that visited here, went even forward and said that he would like to see the embassy moved. Of course, there are problems, things go slowly and whatever, but you cannot avoid seeing this kind of change. So I see this kind of change coming, and we cannot ignore also that in May there will be elections in Europe, and these elections, as any kind of election, can change something, will change something according to all the polls. And here I will jump to an issue which is just the object of my own essay in here. But I won't treat it as just. Do I have 3 minutes more? Thank you so much.
It's going to cost you later. It's going to cost you later.
I want to come to now. I think that this altalena to which Israel is always subjected by Europe, on one side, great economic agreements and wonderful possibilities opening up all the time. Horizon 2020 is one of them. But look, just now that this agreement has to be renewed, somebody came up and said, Israel must be punished for some reason. Israel must always be punished for some reason. So we have to review the agreement and maybe we will not proceed in the direction of having Israel as an effective member. Until today, it's one of the outside members of the agreement, but they have been discussing a lot in the European Union about making Israel a full member. Now again, there is a discussion about that. You don't know exactly what is at this moment Israel punished about, but it happens all the time like this. It was exactly like this also when after the big agreement of 2013 that for the first time introduced Israel in the great relationship, economic relations inside the European Union, from trade to research, whatever, then after a little while, the guidelines came up. It just, you just have a gift, and after the gifts comes the punishment. And after the punishment, there comes a new gift. And again, you have the same situation, and this is always this schizophrenic situation that designs the relationship, which is the best of the world and the worst of the world between the European Union and Israel. Now I want to come to this kind of situation that pushes on the BDS, and somebody will say something about it. I promise I won't say a word about BDS. But for sure BDS is connected to this process of delegitimization that comes up whenever things become bad and the punishment is up. So the BDS immediately raises, are the one that pushes on anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is not an heritage of the past. Anti-Semitism is very, very, very present. Anti-Semitism that my essay here deals about is an hydra with many different heads. But here, according to many books and researches that have been dealt with, and I myself, I've written several books about it. But here now we have a research that really struck me, because while the 85% of the Jews in Europe feel the growth of anti-Semitism, it's a massive survey on 12 European Union states. The 70% of the Jews feel hostility in places like France, Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands, while in Poland, Hungary, and Denmark, it's only the 30%. And the 85% say that the Middle East events have a great impact in Belgium and France, while it drops on 1/5 in Poland and Hungary. So all of the old parameters fall. It's not the right wing that it's also the right wing, of course. I don't want to, but it's not the right wing that produces the contemporary anti-Semitism. It's all of this mass of blaming that falls on Israel, and that makes the accusation, the first one that is felt by the Jews. Yes, I finish. The worst is the comparison between the Nazi and the Israeli in regards to the Palestinians. This is the worst accusation that is felt in this new wave of anti-Semitism. This tells us something that is a key to the general change of the relationship of Europe with Israel and with the Jews in general, and in the general recognition of the Jews as the natural. Let's put it reverse. The recognition of the state of Israel as the natural state of the Jewish people, which is something that has not yet passed in Europe, and I think that here is the main core of all the story. This is the first part of the things that I wanted to say. Just a couple of points. We had here two points of view that were both very, very useful. And first of all, I want to thank the ambassadors because to be so frank and direct, and it's not something that happens every day, you know, to have such a great exchange of ideas. There is a factual point of view, which is the one that has been underlined by Dore, most of all. What will happen if Europe and Israel will keep being in such a bad kind of relationship? What could happen? And the Mediterranean issue is just at the center of the attention. And I think this is something to be taken very much into consideration. You know, we have a common fight, a common ground, a common geopolitical panorama that has to be faced together, and this is quite clear to whoever. Then there is another stage that has been put under strong light, either by Schwammenthal and by Cooper-Wasser, which is the problem of ideology, which is so heavily loaded on the issue that we are dealing with today. What I mean is that when we face the problem of the relationship of Israel with the Palestinians, which is at the center of every harsh discussion that we have between Israel and Europe, we must take into consideration the fact that the paradigm of colonialism, imperialism, that were just put on the ground so many years ago, and that was just happening after the 1967 war, as Dore reminded, are nowadays completely overcome by the fact the Palestinians have been showing all along the times, and the three dramatic attempts by Israel to give them the territories that they requested and then they refused. This kind of project has been overcome by the times. The Palestinians as an entity today do not exist anymore. There are two entities. One is in Ramallah and the other one is in Gaza. So when you speak about two states for two people, you should speak nowadays of three states for two people if you want it to be up to date. Now, I appreciate very much that the European Union is a peace project that wants to go beyond the borders and beyond wars. Israel, unfortunately, has a terrible problem of borders and war. And this is a matter of fact. It cannot be judged according to the European ideology. It must be judged according to its own historical and strategic problem. And another point, here we have not said at all that the European Union is an obstacle to peace. No, it's not. But the Palestinians are, because they always refused any project of peace. And it's quite obvious to anybody that will observe what has been going on. So there is no accusation to the European Union of having opposed any project of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. The opposite. The problem consists in the fact that the European Union, in a way, has refused to consider the fact that the Palestinians have refused the peace. Yes, Israel may have done some mistakes, but if you go to the Israeli schools, and you hear the Israeli songs, and you look around at the Israeli Organization for Peace, and you see how many people here fights for peace, and you see how strong is the issue of peace all over the Israeli society, well, let me tell you that you will find a totally different longing for peace than you have on the Palestinian ground. And this is very sad that we have never seen this recognized by the European Union, because it's something that it's under the. So what I think that today the European Union has to do and is doing according also to this hope of change that I think that has to be shared by whoever is here today, is the change. There is a change now in the situation for the reason that I put down before when I was just giving you some pieces of the lecture that I prepared before. And this is something that you will find in the book. No, it is not a negative book. It's a book that loans and aims for change. And this is something very legitimate due to how the things have been going all along this year. It's a very legitimate point. And if we start from this point that we have the right to loan for a change and that we want a change, this is a common ground. And from this we have to start going on.